Have you ever thought about why Bowser, Bowser Jr., and the Koopalings look so different from other Koopas? Well, as a matter of fact, I have. I've probably given it way too much thought. So the original American NES manual for Super Mario Bros., the OG, the classic, describes the Koopas as a tribe known for their black magic. And I don't think that's changed, really. I think the Koopa's branding has changed. But I think at their core, they are not one species, or at least they didn't start that way. I think they're an assembly, a stew, more like maybe a cult of similar entities, presumably mostly reptilian in nature, that gradually came together over time, and due to some combination of reptiles being crazy and black magic, they've now got this thing going on where there's no consistency to their people. Never was, never probably will be. Which is to say, if Bowser has a child, the child may not look anything like him. The child may come out looking more humanoid. A Lakitu may have a child that looks like Bowser. Things like draconian features, beaks, tails, all of that comes and goes. Not necessarily at random, but it's able to pull from a far deeper series of genes than it would be able to in a human body. Does that make sense? Like, just because my parents have brown eyes doesn't mean I can't have blue eyes if my grandparents had blue eyes. Koopas have that going on, but like for everything, and it goes back more than 2 generations. It goes back the entire history of their so-called species. I think this is part of why Bowser loves Bowser Jr. so much, because it looks like a tiny him. Like he's perfect. He's exactly what Bowser wanted, and he cherishes him, and also he's a good dad. But we've also seen clear genetic variations of Koopas. One of my favorite enemies, period, just because he's lore bait. Like he's so easy to theorize about. In Wario Land, there's an enemy named Spiked Koopa. I believe his Japanese name is something like Thornbros. And he's a Koopa. Like, that's his thing. But he doesn't work for Bowser. He works for Captain Syrup. And he can burrow, which is something I don't think I've seen any other Koopas do ever. And he's green, which suggests some very serious split off in the evolutionary tree of Koopas. Like, that is a lot of differences. And he's tougher than a normal Koopa. He's a boss. He's not just a regular enemy. But he looks like a normal Koopa, color and everything else aside. Like, as far as his body's concerned, he's a bipedal turtle. He's a Koopa. But he's different. And I that's the thing. I think they're all different in a way. And you can compare that and contrast that with the Kremlings. Kremlings have a lot of diversity. There's big ones, there's small ones, there's bipeds, there's quadrupeds. But tails, alligator heads, there's a consistency there. There's a through line, a small conformity that their designs concede to. More so, I would say, than Koopas. And Kremlings also are explicitly a crew, not necessarily an individual species in the same sense. I think the similarities between Kremlings and Koopas, the differences between Kremlings and Koopas, I think those speak volumes about how this whole thing works. I've said it before, but I think there's a common ancestry between Koopas and Yoshis as well. Yoshis and Koopas both hatched with shoes on, both have little saddle shapes sort of naturally built into their backs. Some Yoshis are more bipedal than others, while others seem more intended for riding purposes. More hunched over, closer to the quadrupedal type Koopas. There's just so much that could be speculated on, but it all generally leads to the same direction, that there's a connection between these different creatures. And while Yoshis are Yoshis, Koopas, I think, have a little bit of Yoshi in them, maybe a little bit of Kremling. I go back to comparing Bowser to a dragon, the fire breathing, the spikes, the horns. Yoshis have also been called dragons. They have abilities named after dragons, dragon coins. You're looking at two different flavors of dragon, both explicit in their own unique ways. And I think that's what makes Bowser the guy. I think that's what makes him king, in all honesty, is that he is the most like a proper dragon. That fire breathing, that size, that strength. A lot of it, of course, is that he really is just a charismatic leader. He's a brave warrior when he's there when the pressure is down. We've seen him in the RPGs. He's got a lot of personality. But I think how he got the throne in the first place, the reason I think Kamek was taking care of him as a child, the reason I think Bowser gets to be the man on the throne and not just the Koopa Kingdom equivalent of Mario, I think that is because he is the closest to the Koopa ideal for them culturally. Like, their tribe builds around war. It functions around war. Their magic is dedicated towards firearms and airships and taking over, destruction, conquering. So Bowser being the most like a dragon, Bowser being the most powerful, the most destructive, that clearly puts him in a position of authority. That makes him the guy to listen to, the Koopa to strive to be, and I think everything else in the Koopa genealogy, in the eyes of a Koopa, is probably just a lesser version of Bowser. And a fun question to ask from there is whether or not Bowser really is the peak of that draconian gene, or if that dragon in Mario Odyssey may in fact be an ancient Koopa, or maybe a predecessor to the Koopa species. One of the things that got worked into the stew, perhaps. If I wanted to get real dramatic, and I mean real fanficky, I would suggest that a lot of Bowser's recent activities, like turning himself into a castle or turning himself into whatever that was in Bowser's Fury, scaring his kid, like going too far, over the top, turning into bigger, more powerful things. I think that's the pressure catching up with him. Like, Bowser keeps losing to Mario and having to team up with Mario to take on other threats. And Bowser believes he is the most powerful Koopa. He is the best Koopa. He is the king of the Koopas. And they are fighters. They are warriors. They are soldiers. If he can't defend his kingdom, what good is he? What is left of them? So he's got to be better than Mario. But he never is. And Mario keeps getting better. So Bowser has to keep upping his game. And I think he's getting a little bit desperate at this point. He's hitting his midlife crisis, his Majin Vegeta stage, if you will. And I don't know where that's going, but they've kind of been tugging at that string for a while, so we'll see. So I ended up having more than 10 minutes worth of thoughts on this topic, so it's gonna have to be a two-parter. Tune in next time to hear me rant about dragons and the nature of words. Thank you and good night.